Dear AOC, I am appealing to you because you are a national figure in politics. Anybody who was administrative and legitimate, who researched even the most cursory and superficial details of my sad situation, would immediately recognize that I have been severely abused in acts that constitute and add up unmistakably to terrible torture. For example, I'm 98% deaf. I have a neurotrauma in my facial nerve. I have eyesight injuries leading to glaucoma. They subjected me to a heart emergency that led to diabetes and erectile dysfunction and now Parkinson's disease. They refused me allowed to go to school, so I never lived above the poverty line. I never saw Florence. I never saw Mexico City. I never traveled very much. I've lived alone a long, long time because they've done terrible things to my name. I want to explain what I think has happened. I believe that because my father was on the same ship in the Navy as George Bush, he took me as an object to ridicule and abuse because my father was a human rights activist opposed to the war in Vietnam. I don't know that. I think that might be what happened. It looks to me like this outfit that refuses to do the most elementary administrative research. I've been around 62 years. It can't possibly be lost on everybody. I've written a lot of letters. Had a large concentration camp going under the auspices of the war on drugs. They circulated tainted drugs to everybody, and when I refused to take them, they beat my brains in and forced me to take them. They tricked me at the hospitals into taking unwarranted medication that tampered with my heart and my nervous system irreversibly. And they did this not only by threatening and endangering and brutalizing me, kicking me in the head, but they stabbed an innocent bystander to death as a warning if I didn't comply. It seems to me that behind this act is everybody. Everybody is involved in this terrible crime of false witness and poison. Why would you do it? Why would Louis Lapham leave me vulnerable by writing a protest to the war on drugs and then making it a deliberate point not to defend me from the very things that he claimed he was concerned about when they came directly from Bush, who he addressed the essay War on Drugs about? Why would he work with John Schulman instead, who was slandering me, putting me places I never was, doing things I didn't do, while stealing $6 million worth of museum books from libraries for which he was arrested? Why would these people do this to somebody? It's because Seattle Psychiatric needs to manufacture a threat from each and every person who they poison, or else they will get in trouble. Since they had no threat from me as a nonviolent person, they tortured, abused, and terrorized me. Since I wasn't using drugs, they refused to allow me to go to school. If they had something over me, maybe they would have allowed me to go to school, but they had nothing over me, so they banned me. I sat staring into space for 12 years while the poisons they administered slowly but surely gave me tremors, an irreversible condition, Parkinson's disease. I have no hope of any sort of involvement with anybody else. I've developed serious asthma, about which I'm seeing a doctor today. It's an atrocity, and it's very personal, and it's directed against one individual. And to contradict the fact that I'm an individual who's been targeted, they've manufactured every sort of allegation to the effect that I'm trying to abandon my responsibilities to others. I've never abandoned any responsibility to anyone, but what responsibility do I have to be tortured for the gratification and glee of sadists? Can you explain this to me? Because I don't understand. And it's all being done in cold blood, openly in broad daylight. Meanwhile, we have a staggering, unnecessary conflict going on in the Ukraine with a country that we fail to represent honorably in our diplomatic history books. I have no patience for Putin's explanations for invading the Ukraine, but it would be a lot more resonant with somebody like me if you hadn't all taken the side of an Axis revenge consortium who picked on me and deliberately disabled me from the time I was about 9 years old, subjecting me to horrifying degradations and humiliations and blackmail. And they wouldn't ever let me go either. They treated me like a fugitive slave, not because I used drugs, but because I refused to use drugs. These people are criminally insane. They say that I smoked some pot when I was in trauma in high school. Well, how was I going to blend in with my peers as a deaf person if I didn't? It wouldn't have been possible. The people who were plying me with pot were all people who went on to represent this group who did this to me. Is that why? And that's why I was able to break out of it, was because I realized that fact. I realized that they were poisoning people to keep them prisoners in this at-large concentration camp they justified by what they could call a war on drugs. What gives? I realized that two oceans separate America from what Adolf Hitler did to Europe. I realized that the Cardinals are a good team in baseball. I realize that people want to take something to take their minds off climate change. Does that mean you have to torture a deaf man who now has Parkinson's disease to death? I don't understand. If you're not going to explain, would you at least consider stopping it?